Hey friends, it's Joel Richardson, and this is The Underground. Welcome to this episode of The Underground, a program that explores the testimony of the biblical prophets, the gospel of Jesus Christ, current events, and how all of these things relate to you and me. Now, it's been a couple months since I've been with you all. Thank you all for your patience. I'm doing well. I've just been incredibly busy, and I'm happy to be back. Now, before I jump into this episode, I have a really good and exciting announcement. So it's been about 2 years. I have been working like crazy on my newest book, Sinai to Zion, The Untold Story of the Triumphant Return of Jesus. And friends, I mean it when I say this. I legitimately feel as though this is the most important book and arguably the best book that I've ever written. It's all about the end times, it's about the story of redemption, and ultimately it culminates, part 3 is all about the return of Jesus, and it tells the story from an Old Testament perspective in a way that has never been told before. I mean, it's an exhilarating Bible study, and it's really intended, it's heavy material. It turned out, I tried to write the shortest book that I've ever written. It turned out to be the longest book. But it really is for those who love to study the Bible. So I've written it with the intention that folks would get together in groups and work through the material, work through the scriptures, and it's heavy stuff. So there's a lot of meat in this book, but I'm really excited about it. So Sinai to Zion, the untold story of the triumphant return of Jesus. Now, let me just say this. As of this recording, I have already released the book on Amazon Kindle. So if you're a Kindle guy, Kindle gal, just go on Amazon. You can get the Kindle version. But I also give away all of my books for free as PDF files on my website. It's just, look, if I'm writing this stuff, the ultimate goal is to get it in the hands of people, to get the message out. So I put all of my books. Now that I got all the rights back to all of my books about 2 years ago from WND, my former publisher, and since then I have put all my stuff out there for free on my website, joelstrumpet.com. Click on free resources. If you don't mind the digital version, it's all there for free, and we're actively right now working on several different foreign language translations of some of the different books, including Sinai to Zion. So there's a lot of work taking place behind the scenes. Now, in terms of the hardcover, if you're a hardcover guy, which I am, I like my books. When the power goes out and the end times are here, I've got my library, and I love my books. But that said, I'm only going to release the hardcover on my website, not Amazon. Why am I doing it that way? Well, because I give away my books for free, let me just say they don't sell nearly as much as they would otherwise, and that's okay. I'm not into writing for profit. Again, it's for the purpose of getting the message out. However, in order to print up a bunch of books, to do all of the editing, the professional editing, to do it well, create the book cover and print up a few thousand copies, it ends up costing me probably about 20 grand per book. This book, it's about 20 grand. And to be honest with you, I'll barely recoup those costs, let's say the first year. That's realistic. Based on the sales of my last 2 books, barely recoup the costs, and that's okay. But if I put it on Amazon, they pretty much eat up so much of the profit. And they don't give authors a tremendous amount. But by doing it on my website, I'm going to make a little bit more. Now, I've got a great warehouse, and they get it out to you really quick. And the good thing about ordering it through my website is that every book is signed. So I sign every book, so you can get an extra quarter for it on eBay, an extra 25 cents or whatever on Craigslist. No, but so I'm doing it that way again, just really trying to recoup the costs of printing and so forth. But it blesses me, obviously, if I can make an extra couple dollars per book. It helps me out. So thank you very much. If you are able to become a regular supporter and donor, again, it would greatly bless me. We're going to do our best, as I said, to get as many foreign translations done in all of the books as possible. And when you go on free resources on my website, you'll see a lot of the books that we've already got out there, and I just post them right there on the site. So, and there's tremendous other resources there as well. Okay, so with that said, we're going to jump into today's discussion. Now, this is kind of a different discussion, but it's something that really I made a few comments on Twitter. Let me just begin by saying it started out this way. It's fall, okay? Right now, it's the end of September, going into October, and I'm here in Kansas in the Midwest. It's one of my favorite times of year. I grew up in Massachusetts, South Shore, Massachusetts, and the fall up there is just majestic with all of the colors and so forth, and the smells and just the memories. It's so incredibly just evocative. I just actually came back from there for my dad's funeral, which took like 5 months with COVID, and they're just starting to enter into the cool season, enter into fall. But what else comes with fall? It's pomegranate season, and I love pomegranates. I love seasonal produce, and so I went in the grocery store, I saw a bunch of pomegranates, I bought a big bag. I can just eat those things like crazy. So I posted a picture on Twitter, hey, it's pomegranate season, and then I just kind of went off on a little bit of a random rant. And it reminded me of something that I had intended to touch on quite a while ago, which is with regard to the Star of David that's on the flag of Israel, as well as something called the Star of Rephan, or some translations will say Ramphan. Different translations say different things. And essentially, the purpose of this discussion is to try to do a good historical overview of a very controversial subject. And I think we're going to bring some light to this subject. Now, let me just say this. The flag of the state of Israel, with the 2 blue stripes and then the 6-pointed hexagram, the 6-pointed star, often referred to as the Shield of David or the Star of David, this is really a modern convention since the establishment of the State of Israel in terms of its usage as the primary symbol for the Jewish people. And with that, there's a tremendous amount of controversy. Now, as you all know, I often am speaking out against the rise of anti-Semitism, particularly in the church. Particularly in the Christian church. Now, throughout history, for those who have read my book, When a Jew Rules the World, if you haven't, please get that book. Beyond my new book, I really feel like that's been my most important book to date. But in that, I trace the long, painful, bloody history of the Christian mistreatment and abuse of the Jewish people down through history. And it's undeniable, it's brutal, it's persistent, and it's a stain on the Christian church, on the history of the Christian church. Now, unfortunately, in modern times, once again, Christian anti-Semitism is not just rearing its ugly head, it is exploding. And particularly, sadly, because of all sorts of videos that are done on YouTube. Now, obviously, this will be on YouTube, and I'm not opposed to YouTube. But a lot of people are getting their education and their information exclusively through YouTube, or of course they Google. And there's sort of a whole world of Christian conspiratorial theorizing, much of which involves a lot of rabid anti-Semitism. And I've mentioned some different names, folks like Rick Wiles, Pastor Steven Anderson. I mean, there's a whole host of folks out there that are really rabidly anti-Semitic. Now, not everyone who has espoused some of the ideas that I'm going to talk about are necessarily anti-Semitic, because there is some historical basis for concern concerning the Star of David. There is some legitimate historical reasons to be concerned or to be leery, let's put it that way. But hopefully by the end of this discussion, you'll see, hopefully we'll bring a more balanced sort of discussion to all of this. Okay, so the Star of David, the adoption of the 6-pointed hexagram referred to as the Star of David, there's really no historical basis to believe that this is indeed the Star of David. There's no solid basis for that it was ever a symbol embraced or utilized by David. It's just something that's called in Hebrew, the Magen David, which I think is also you've got like sort of a Shabbat wine, like an extra sweet wine often used. You've got the Manischewitz and the Magen David are two of the popular brands, but that's referring to the Star of David, or again, the Shield of David. There's no real reason to believe that it is in fact the Star of David. However, it was embraced by the Zionists late 1800s, I'm not sure the exact date, early 1900s, as the Zionist movement was emerging with Theodor Herzl, and eventually became embraced as the symbol for the modern state of Israel, as opposed to what probably would have been the most significant symbol for the Jewish people down through history. Archaeologically, that would have been the menorah. Okay, so really, if you are trying to be as biblical as possible, they should have used the menorah. So I want to say that up front. However, there is this sort of huge theory or teaching, and there's no shortage of it. I mean, numerous websites and numerous videos that claim that the Star of David is actually an occult symbol, that it is a satanic symbol, that it is an idol, that it has been used throughout Israel's history as an idol for a false god, for Saturn or for Molech or for Rephan, or there's all sorts of different names, that it's a Babylonian god or a Sumerian god or any number of pagan gods, okay? And therefore, okay, and this is the important point, therefore it today still carries this evil meaning, and that it's really an occult symbol. And this is often utilized to demonize not only the modern state of Israel, but the modern Israel, the Israeli Jewish people. Okay, not just Jews in general, but Israeli Jews. It's used to demonize them, to say they're actually all occultists and so forth. And so in the world of emerging Christian anti-Semitism, the sort of new anti-Semitism, there are all number of theories that you see recycled all over the place. And, look, guys, every morning I wake up and on my YouTube videos, there will be 20, sometimes 30 new comments. And, maybe 10 of those will have anti-Semitic statements. They'll say, you must be a Zionist. The Jews of Israel, they're not real Jews. They're the synagogue of Satan. Or they're fake Khazarian Jews. They're actually Babylonian fakers and pretenders and this type of thing. And they'll say, we are the true Jews. And you see this in the Christian church. You see it, unfortunately, in groups like the Black Hebrew Israelites, various Gentiles who are claiming to actually be Jews, and then claiming that the Jews today are actually frauds and pretenders and this type of thing. And that the modern state of Israel is actually a Rothschild, Khazarian, satanic, again, synagogue of Satan. You see all these different terms, and it's a massive, massive collection of ideas. One guy might hold to a few ideas, but reject others, and it's just sort of a big hodgepodge. Well, one of the ideas that's very popular, again, within this whole mindset, as I said, is that the flag of Israel is in fact an ancient pagan symbol. It's an idol. It's forbidden by Scripture, and it's evil. And it's sort of a sign, that we should pay attention that Israel's actually evil. So let's explore this. Let's get into it. Now, first of all, the primary scriptural basis for this is Amos chapter 5, verse 26 through 27. So Amos said this. He said, basically, did you not make offerings to me and so forth in the desert? And then he said, you also carried along Succoth, your king, and Kayun, your images. So there's two different references here, Succoth and Kayun, your images. And then he says, the star of your gods, which you made for yourselves. So they were carrying some type of an idol that was associated with the worship of Kayun and Succoth. Now, some people say Kayun or Chayun, there's different ways that it's pronounced, is actually the Hebrew pronunciation of the Persian name for Saturn, for the god Saturn. This is what you'll often see, when you kind of do a little research. And so people will say the Israelites were worshiping the pagan god Saturn. And there was a star. There was an idol that was a star that was associated with these gods. We're going to look at some pictures. Now, Saturn has kind of a six-pointed shape on one end of the planet. Now, is there a way that they could have known that in ancient times? I highly question that personally. I highly, highly question. They didn't have telescopes. But we'll get into that and talk some more. And then the Lord says, therefore I will make you go into exile beyond Damascus, says the Lord, whose name is God of hosts. Now later, Stephen, young, glowing, shining-faced Stephen the martyr, just before he dies, he goes on this long sermon and this rebuke, this prophetic rebuke toward the religious authorities of his day, and he really goes over the story of redemption and Israel's history, and then he ends by rebuking them and indicting them. And just before he was killed, before he was stoned to death, he said this, and he quotes Amos. He said, you also took along the tabernacle of Molech, the star of the god Rephan. Okay, Rephan. The images which you made to worship, I will also remove you beyond Babylon. So Stephen was quoting the Greek translation of the Old Testament, the Septuagint. So it's a little bit different than what we just read in Amos. Okay, so that becomes the scriptural basis. Now, based on that, as I said, here's some images. I mean, you'll see stuff like this all over the internet. Here's a particular article. It says, the Star of David or the Star of Rephan. And here's a statement within the article, because this is what it leads to. It says, it is quite evident that the Jews are still carrying a star of their god, Rephan. That's quite an indictment. Because the Jews have this six-pointed star, because Chayun is the Hebrew equivalent of the Persian Saturn, and because Saturn has this shape on one end that's kind of six-pointed, again, assuming that ancient man had the ability to know that, it's argued then, even though that shape is really not the same as the shape of the Star of David, this guy goes on to say the Jews today, they're still carrying and worshiping their god, Rephan, this pagan god Molech, or Saturn, which they still make for themselves today. While they may not acknowledge a god associated with this star, this does not make it non-offensive to God, who is holy, who does not allow his people to possess charms, idols, or talismans. He goes on, he says, Catholics have idols, mainstream Christians have Christmas trees, and the Jews have talisman star charms, all in violation of God's laws against idolatry. So this is the type of stuff that you'll see in articles and YouTube videos. Here's another YouTube video that was put out by 119 Ministries. I'm friends with Steve Mutria. He and I go way, way back. They've done a lot of great videos over the years, but this video is called Testing the Star of David. And I think they're careful not to really indict the state of Israel, but really their video has become the basis, sort of a source for a lot of these other articles, again, to argue that the Star of David is in fact actually a pagan symbol that should not be used. So here's an image, for what it's worth, of Saturn. Now when you look at it, you have this shape on one end of the planet, and it does kind of have a bit of a it's basically a circle that's a little bit of a hexagram. Now that is not the Star of David, but it does have six very rounded sort of edges. But here's the thing, how could the ancients have known that? I mean, unless you have a powerful, powerful telescope, there's no way to know that Saturn has this sort of six-pointed element to it. Now, in modern times, we see that, and you go, yes, therefore the six-pointed must be the evil number, and this type of thing, as opposed to the five-pointed pentagram or the eight-pointed star that you commonly see throughout the Middle East and this type of thing. So that becomes the primary basis, is the etymological connection between Chayun or Kayun and the Persian pronunciation for this god, which is Saturn. And then Saturn sort of has this sort of roundish, six-pointed shape on one side. And therefore, the Star of David today is a talisman, a charm, or this type of thing. Now, here's the problem. Let's go back and actually look at Acts chapter 7, verse 43. Let's read it again. He says, you took along the tabernacle of Molech, the star of the god Rephan or Rephan, the images which you made to worship. Okay, so the point here is that they were worshiping the images, they were idols of their gods. Now, we have no idea what that image looked like. It could have been a three-dimensional idol. It could have been like a pillar. I mean, it could have been a shape, a two-dimensional shape like the Star of Day. We have no idea. We really don't. We don't know what this idol was. But the offense is not in anything six-sided or six-pointed. This is the mindset that a lot of Christians have. And it's as though, even though we're Christians, even though we worship God, even though we believe that God is far more powerful than Satan, we have this kind of fetishist mentality, this mentality that actually agrees with magic and those that practice magic, that things such as shapes or symbols actually have power, that they have some inherent meaning, that a six-pointed star can inherently be evil. Right? But here's the thing. Who made shapes? Who made designs? Who made Saturn? Did Satan make Saturn or did the Lord make Saturn? Did the Lord make that six-pointed sort of round shape on? Yes, the Lord did. But the idea is that, well, if some ancient pagans claimed it first, then from that point forward, it's always evil. See, this is the point, is that it's not like the shape itself is evil. It's not that the symbol is evil. What is evil is the worship, is the idolatry, is the false gods. That's what's evil. That's what they were guilty of. It's not that the symbol itself forever possesses some inherent evil trait. Guys, the rainbow is a sign in Genesis 9 in the clouds of the covenant. God created the rainbow, and he specifically chose it as a beautiful sign of his covenant, promising never again to destroy the earth with a flood, right? Today, the rainbow has been claimed by the LGBT. It has been claimed by those that practice things which are unbiblical. Let's just put it that way. So is the rainbow a good sign or a bad sign? Well, God created it first, right? Satan later, or you could say the world, who are following Satan, claimed it later. Does that mean we just give it over to Satan? Does that mean that he claimed it, he called it, No, because we believe that God is much more powerful than Satan. I've made this point before in another program. The goat, the head of a goat. This is often used for Baphomet worship or Luciferian Satan worship. Well, is the goat evil, or is it an adorable little farm animal? Mama. Personally, I think God created goats. I think lambs, goats, sheep, they were all created by God. Now, Satan wants to lay claim to various things that God has created. That doesn't mean that we give those things over to Satan, okay? So now let's deal with a bit more history. Let's dig in a little bit deeper, and let's look at these things in some more detail. Now, first of all, there's a really neat verse that we need to start with, a neat passage in Exodus. Because really, throughout the Bible, there's not a tremendous amount of divinely commissioned art. All right, what do I mean by that? God doesn't often commission Israel to use symbols and images, but there are a few places that he does. For example, the menorah. In Torah, at Sinai, the Lord commanded Israel to make a menorah, and it's designed after almond branches and so forth, and that really is, as I said, become the primary symbol or sign for Israel. But the Lord also commissioned the use of another important natural image, and that's the pomegranate. And so let's look at this in Exodus 28, verse 31 through 35. The Lord says, "You shall make the rope of the ephod," so he's talking about the ephod that the priest would wear, olive blue. "There shall be an opening at its top in the middle of it. Around its opening there shall be a binding of woven work." So embroidered woven work, like the opening of a coat of mail, so that it will not be torn. "You shall make on its hem pomegranates of blue and purple and scarlet material." This is embroidered work on the hem of the ephod and the priest's garments. Embroidered images in blue and purple and scarlet of pomegranates. And all around its hem, and bells of gold between them all around. A golden bell and a pomegranate. A golden bell and a pomegranate, all around the hem of the robe. It shall be on what Aaron, when he ministers, and its tinkling, its ringing, the bells, shall be heard when he enters and leaves the holy place before the Lord, so that he will not die. So you've got golden bells that tinkle, that ring, whatever, and you've got embroidered pomegranates on. So the Lord commissioned that Israel utilize the imagery, the symbolism, specifically of pomegranates. So I started out by saying I'm excited about pomegranates. There's one of the pomegranates that I grabbed when I went to the grocery store. Now, when you look at it, the pomegranate's a pretty unique fruit. And as I said, it's delicious. I love the pomegranate. But check this out. Look at the pomegranate blossom. So here's a blossom. When they just start out, after the flowers, it starts out as what? A six-pointed star of David, what we call the six-pointed star of David. That's how the pomegranate starts out. Anyone who lives someplace where pomegranates grow would know this. Again, these were common fruits in the land, in the biblical land. The Israelites would, if they looked at a Star of David, what would they see? They would see a pomegranate blossom. That's the first thing that would come to their mind. They wouldn't think Saturn. Okay, so here's the point. What is in the mind of the Jews if they were to see today the Israeli flag? They would see a pomegranate blossom. The specific image, the specific fruit that the Lord commanded to be used in the embroidery of the priest's garments. Now again, a pomegranate is only going to be portrayed one of two ways. From the side, which is essentially a ball with the little crown on top, or from the top, in which case it's a ball with a Star of David in the middle. It's a six-pointed Star of David. Now, occasionally they may have 5 points or 7. There's some mutants, so to speak. But overwhelmingly, the shape for a pomegranate is a six-pointed hexagram that really does reflect the flag of the modern state of Israel. Now, of course, when you buy them at the grocery store today, most often after they've been harvested, the crowns have been damaged, they're dried, they're brittle, they're shipped across wherever you live, unless you live someplace where they grow fresh. Most often the tops are damaged. But anyone who lives in a region where these things grow, they would recognize that very unique blossom. And they would recognize the Star of David as basically being identical to the blossom of the pomegranate. Again, let me just say it one more time. The specific fruit that the Lord commanded, God himself commanded that imagery would be embroidered into the garments of the priestly garments. This is not a small issue. Now, have pagans also used a six-pointed Star of David throughout history? Have Buddhists use it? Have Hindus used it? Have different Sumerians and Babylonians used it? Sure. Have the Kabbalists, the Jewish Kabbalists within Jewish mysticism and magic used it? Yes. Have Muslims used it? Yes. Have pagans used it? Yes. Does the LGBT use the rainbow? Yes. Is the rainbow evil? No, because God made it. God made it, and God commanded that the rainbow be used as a sign of his covenant. God made the pomegranate. God made the six-pointed hexagram. Yahweh made the Star of David. And he commanded that the pomegranate be used in the design of the priestly garments. Now, perhaps it was not intended to be a view from the top, only from the side. But guys, there's a 50-50 chance. Bottom line, there's really only two angles that you're gonna stylize a pomegranate into embroidery work. It's one of two options, from the side or from the top. Now, someone who is just bound and determined to say, no, the Jews are evil, the modern state of Israel is evil, the Star of David's evil, they're going to say, It can't be. But again, 50-50 chance. And when you think of art and design, embroidery work, which has more of a design quality to it, right? The hexagram or just a ball? You know, a ball with a little crown on top. Like, that doesn't actually strike me as, because again, it's not, these are not, they're not little sculptures. These are not little gold pomegranates. They're embroidered pomegranates with gold bells in between them. So I would argue that there's a much better chance that what was embroidered on the priestly garment was in fact essentially a Star of David. But even if you don't believe that, the bottom line is God still made it. God still made that shape. He still made that imagery. Satan doesn't own it. Satan tries to claim all kinds of things that God made, but we don't give Satan power. We believe God is more powerful. We are not fetishists. We are not terrified. Oh no, six-pointed star, as if it has some inherent power. Guys, we don't believe in sorcery and magic. We are Christians. We worship the one true God, and we believe he has all power, not Satan. But it's like Christians often walk around with so much fear. The power, or the danger, let me put it this way, is in worshiping idols, is in worshiping false gods. There's not some inherent thing that we should be terrified of with regard to shapes. Now again, my ministry logo, I've dealt with this before. It's an 8-pointed star with a crown of thorns inside, stylized. The 8-pointed star is the most widely recognized architectural element within Middle Eastern architecture and design. You know, in the fretwork and even in the mosques and so forth. Everyone, when they see that 8-pointed star, they think the Middle East. The crown of thorns inside obviously represents the cross and the gospel. And I designed it to communicate my primary ministry calling, which is to bring the gospel to the Islamic world, to bring the cross, to proclaim the good news, to proclaim the coming kingdom. I designed it, and therefore that's what it means. I can't tell you how many comments I get of people saying, Joel, what about that occult imagery behind you? Who do you work for, Joel? You're a Luciferian. I just had someone today send me a comment saying that my wife worships the devil. You know, these are Christians based on again, this is fetishism, accusing another brother or sister of worshiping Satan because they are so terrified of images and symbols, as opposed to the act itself of idolatry and worship. I mean, like, you know, here I am, a believer that's giving my life to proclaim the gospel and to preach the cross and the soon coming return of Christ. And random Christians are, just casually accuse myself and my incredibly godly wife of being Satan worshipers. Like, who have we become? Who have we become? And again, I know it's not everybody, but there's a lot of it out there. It's irresponsible. It's un-Christ-like. It's deeply un-Christ-like. We are not people who live in fear and paranoia. You know, it's like I said to one guy in one of the comments, I mean, it's immature for me to even interact, with some of this type of stuff, but every once in a while, somebody said, which lodge do you go to, Joel? Like a Masonic lodge. And I said, look, I am a regular guy. I was a house painter most of my adult life. I transitioned into full-time ministry only 5 years ago. My wife has got long-term illness. I've got a kid that's in a sobriety program, one of my adult children. I wrestle sometimes with sadness and depression. Like I'm just a regular guy. I'm not rich. And yet, in the mind of some of these folks that leave these comments, I'm like this Luciferian guy who works for Bill Gates, or who works for the Zionists, or who works for the reptilian aliens, or who works for the CIA, whatever. And I'm secretly in bed with the globalists to try to convince everyone to take the mark of the beast, or just crazy stuff. And I said to the guy, I go, I'm a person. I'm not some powerful elitist that's being paid by Bill Gates. And literally, I thought I would appeal to his humanity. He responded, he said, your father is the devil. And he called me a Luciferian. I'm just like, really? People like that actually exist. Now, in the Temple of Solomon, there were 2 bronze pillars out front. And at the top of it were pomegranates. Now, those were carried away by the Babylonians, so we really don't know what shape those were in. They don't probably exist. They probably have been melted down at this point. I doubt that we'll ever find them. But we don't know exactly. But again, pomegranates were not only featured in the design of the priestly garments, they were prominently displayed as part of Solomon's temple. But get this, we also have found a very small ivory sculpture, a little pomegranate, and it's one of the very few artifacts that we have from Solomon's temple, and it's a pomegranate. So here's a little picture of it, and it's been damaged, it's broken, but it had 6 points on it. 6 points. It's really more of a blossom because it's so small, and it has this ancient Paleo-Hebrew inscribed in it. Now, this was found, 20 years or so ago, and there was a short phase where they said it's a forgery, it's a fraud, but they have since come to recognize, they did some telemetric scanning and so forth, and they've come to say, yes, it's a legitimate artifact from Solomon's temple, a pomegranate. So again, the point is this. The 6-pointed star is inherently part of the pomegranate. You can't get around it. Anybody who knows pomegranates would recognize it as such. So the 6-pointed star is not inherently evil. What is evil is not even making a carving of it. Again, it was used in the temple. We find elements of it from, they say it went on the tip of a scepter that was used in Solomon's temple. It was used by the Israelites, by God-fearing, Yahweh-worshiping Israelites, okay? Was it used by pagans as well? Yes. What did they do with it? They worshipped it. They used it as a symbol of their false gods. So you can see that the same symbol can be used for good or bad, right? Either way. Now, again, I want to be clear, it's never been the primary symbol for the Jewish people up until modern history. Okay, so we're not trying to rewrite history. Now, here's something that's really neat. Here's some pictures of some modern Torah cases. Okay, so anybody who's been to a synagogue, you know they keep the Torah scrolls in the kind of tabernacle up front, and they have these beautiful silver and gold cases. You know, when you go to Jerusalem, there's all kinds of antique stores, and some of these things sell for, big bucks. Well, at the top of these cases is these finials, and they are essentially crowns, or often designed after a pomegranate, but they're far more ornate, far more detailed than just a pomegranate. Sometimes they're referred to in English as the pomegranates. Sometimes they're referred to as the crowns. Why? Because a pomegranate is a pomegranate with a crown on top. It's actually shaped like a classic kingly crown, so to speak. And so here's a really neat image of a Torah crown, a silver Torah crown, and you can see all of the Hebrew writing if you really zoom in on it, and some of the imagery there. It's on display, I want to say, in a museum in Paris, and it's beautiful. I saw this, I thought, that's gorgeous. So on the cover of my book, Sinai to Zion, I actually used this imagery. So I just want to tell you the backstory to my book, because it has a lot of meaning to me, and unless I explain it, no one will ever really know. So here's the cover of my book. Now, instead of having the Torah scrolls with the pomegranate crown on top, I designed the cover of the book to have the 10 Commandment tablets with the crown on top, because the book is From Sinai to Zion. From Sinai to Zion. So the Lord moved from Sinai up to Zion as he led his people into the promised land. And likewise, as I deal with in the book, when he returns, he will engage in a holy march, a triumphal procession from Sinai to Zion. So it begins with Sinai, again the tablets represent Sinai, to Zion when the Messiah, the Son of David, when Yeshua, Jesus, the Son of David, will be enthroned on Mount Zion, thus the crown. And so it's got sort of double imagery. It's kind of reflecting that Jewish imagery of the Torah with the pomegranate crown on top, but likewise it's also telling the story of God's triumphal procession. So that's kind of the backstory to the cover. I designed it, and then I had my guy, Mark Karras, tweak it and beautify it and use better font and so forth. But so for those that get the book, I just wanted to give you a little bit of the backstory. And it kind of ties into what we were talking about. Now, what else in history has the six-pointed star been used besides pagan imagery, Kabbalah, even Islamic imagery or Sumerian, Babylonian, as well as, again, in nature itself, the pomegranate, and most likely on the priestly garments? What else? It was also put as the yellow patch with the word Jew written in either French or German, different languages, sewn onto the clothing of Jews to identify them as Jews. And this becomes one of the most iconic, nightmarish iconic images out of the Holocaust, that those inspired by Satan who wanted to wipe out the Jewish people, God's people, used the Star of David. Okay, and so it's out of the aftermath of the Holocaust that Israel is revived. And personally, when I think of the song Hatikva, the national anthem of Israel, singing about the hope of Israel and the reestablishment of Israel after 2,000 years back in their homeland, I personally think it's beautiful that they used the Star of David, that was used, as an insult during the Holocaust in Germany and wherever the Nazis went. It was used as a badge of shame, that it's now used as a symbol of hope, that they have been reestablished in the land. And ultimately, yes, there's difficult times ahead. And yes, to be clear, the majority of the Jews in the land today are not believers, but they are the true Jews. Biblically speaking, there's no way to get around it. And when Jesus returns, all those who are left after Jacob's trouble, all Israel will be saved when they look upon the one they've pierced. And this is really the subject, the culmination of the book Sinai to Zion. I deal with when all Israel will be saved and how this is such a prominent theme throughout the Old Testament and the New as well. And it's just a theme that so much of the church today doesn't understand, and we need to understand it because I believe we're stepping into those days, or those days are upon us. So personally, I think it's beautiful. But again, when you look at the Star of David, you say, what does that look more like? Does it look like this kind of shape that is on Saturn? And would the ancients have actually even been aware of that? Or does it look more like a pomegranate? To me, it looks more like a pomegranate. And it looks exactly like the yellow badge worn by the Jews throughout the Holocaust. So again, I just want to say that, as Christians, maybe you say, well, it's been associated with pagans, so therefore it's always pagan and I don't want to touch it. And I go, okay, fine. You don't have to use it or utilize it, but don't by any means use it as some claim to say that the modern state of Israel are all occult and they're worshiping their god Rephan, and this type of thing. I mean, that is the anti-Semitism that needs to be confronted and challenged, because they're not going to show you that the pomegranate itself has the hexagram. They're not going to show you that. They're not going to talk about that. They just want to demonize the modern state of Israel and this type of thing. And again, not everybody that does it. 119 Ministries, they're not anti-Semitic, okay? Groups like that. But it's these ideas that are used to support this conspiratorial kind of mindset. And as Christians, we need to mature beyond that. We need to mature beyond that. The Jewish people in the land today are in fact the Jewish people. If they're not, Satan sure as heck has not received the memo, guys. Why is Satan so determined to wipe them out? Because they are God's people. And biblically speaking, there is no way to get around that those who are in the land today are God's people. Let's look at Joel chapter 3 and we'll close this out. The Lord said, Joel chapter 3, verse 1 and 2, "For behold, in those days and at that time, when I restore the fortunes of Judah and Jerusalem." The Lord has restored the fortunes of Judah and Jerusalem. He's brought them back from all over the world. They've reestablished the ancient wastelands. He said, it's at that time that I will gather all the nations, all the Gentiles, and I will bring them down to the valley of Jehoshaphat. That's Jerusalem. That's the Kidron Valley. And there I will enter into judgment with them on behalf of my people, my inheritance, Israel. Who are the people in the land that the Gentiles are invading? My people, the Lord says, my inheritance, Israel. The people in the land today, the YouTubers, Rick Wiles, any of these type of people can say they're not true Jews. They're Khazarians, they're Babylonians, they're the Satan's seed, they're the synagogue of Satan, all these different type of things. The Lord says, they are my people. They are my inheritance, Israel. And I'm going to have to go with what the Lord says. I'm going to have to go with what the Lord says. And then he says, they scattered my people among the nations. That will happen during the time of Jacob's trouble, and they divided up my land. That has not happened yet. Okay, so let us walk soberly. Let us walk with humility. I hope that you understand my heart behind sharing this. Again, pre-order my new book, Sinai to Zion. Go to joelstrumpet.com and click on the store. And as I said, as soon as I release this video, it will be out within probably a week or 10 days. And again, if you'd like to become a regular supporter, it would tremendously bless me, obviously, for itinerant ministers and this type of thing. It's been a very difficult year, but I know that many of you have been in the same boat and many of you are struggling, so I honor that very much. But if the Lord moves on your heart and he's blessed you, then, as I said, it would be a tremendous blessing to me as well. So again, that's all the time that we have for this week. Thanks for your patience, friends. Hopefully we'll be real active here soon. In fact, I'm actually going to start a whole series where I'm going to teach through the whole book. I mean, chapter by chapter, I'm just going to teach the whole book, and that could be 30 or more different programs. So that's going to be a big project coming up here real soon. So again, guys, good seeing you all. Look forward to seeing you next time. Until then, I'm Joel Richardson, and this is The Underground.